So what about the investment front? I mean, that's something that, kind of always have to talk about in these things. We haven't had any like blockbuster deals in the first half, but what's your sense on what's going on out there?
There have been a few different trends that we've seen. One has been investment not so much in brands, but in sort of infrastructure and technology plays. There's money put into LA Libations, of course, which is a sort of do-it-all brand development and brokerage house that has some media connections, and they've worked closely with Coke's Venturing Emerging Brands unit. So that was sort of I don't want to classify it as a thank you investment, but a recognition of capacity and how important that is when developing entrepreneurial brands. And then another technology play that Coke got into has been investing in Keurig, which is making in concert with Coke, making a at-home cold beverage processing machine to accompany the Keurig coffee maker.
Have to respond to SodaStream at some point too, I suppose, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, back to investment for a second. I mean, what about kind of on the startup end? I mean, it seems like the climate has still been pretty good, assuming you're in the right category, right? I mean, if you're starting up an energy drink, there's probably not a lot of, kind of good capital out there for you, but we're seeing a lot with, juice companies and sort of some of those categories we talked about.
Absolutely. And again, people are investing to some extent in momentum, where you see ACG doing a follow-on investment in Suja a couple of months after Boulder Brands had invested. Just a couple of days ago, we wrote about the fact that another sort of momentum-based brand, Kavita, had picked up a D round of investment, and that's just money that helps facilitate growth for some of these brands. The other space that we're seeing for newer brands are smaller but still significant infusions of growth capital, something like a Spindrift soda and seltzer company, which is run by a veteran entrepreneur who has a great reputation in Bill Creelman. They picked up a couple of million, which will allow them to fuel some regional expansion and continue to deepen their footprint. We saw the same thing with Essentia, where they picked up about 3-point-something million to try and hardwire their network nationally and move more into conventional retail. So it's expansion based, but they're still sort of they are emerging beverage companies, and people are taking some risks on that.
So before we wrap up, let's maybe talk a little bit about some predictions, since we were asked to talk about that. But what's your sense of what we're going to see in the second half here?
Well, one of the things I want to talk about is just how tough it is to predict. As we saw with Aloe back in
Sure.
the day, it's there's a lot of attention that sometimes goes to plays that may not turn into wide-based marketing and retailing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that you're right. It is hard to predict that. I mean, for me, like, if I were to predict, I think, looking at some of these categories that we're talking about, juice being a great example, like, I sort of feel like, there is going to continue to be an accelerated shift there, such that what we're talking about right now and what we're probably talking about it in December or early 2015, like, I feel like it's going to be a pretty different category. You've got this sort of, all of these brands that are trying to go national. You've got brands that are trying to go regional. You've got, juice retailers. I think, you've also got some potential headwinds with the use of the word raw and HPP. So I sort of feel like something's going to kind of change dramatically.
Absolutely. Don't forget some of the strategics possibly getting into the game.
Right. I mean, that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, you also have all these brands that are little kind of independent offerings. I mean, it can only get so big before the big guys hop in.
Yeah, or they could try and and apply the technology backwards, and
Right.
you see an Odwalla or a naked HPP. I mean, they certainly made a run at it with coconut water.
So let's talk about coconut water for a minute. I mean, that's come up in I don't know how many roundups that we've done. It seems like a year where there haven't been a lot of product introductions. I don't know, it feels maybe a little stagnant on the innovation side, in terms of new startup brands. What's your take?
I think for the established brands, it's sort of convincing a new set of consumers that coconut water is the new coconut water. So you see products like Vita Coco lemonade, like Zola lemonade,
Sure.
that are, again, trying to bring more consumers on board. Some folks call it training wheels for the category. I think you might see more of that with teas and other ways to get the sort of new consumer on board.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like something that, when I say stagnant, I mean, there just literally haven't been many that have launched. But I don't think, the opportunity has kind of changed. I mean, this category is sort of somewhere in its life cycle. From my perspective, it seems like something that awareness is much greater, consumers' acceptance of it, massively different than it was, say 5 years ago. So the opportunity is definitely there for growth, but it seems like entrepreneurs, maybe it's because of, HPP and something else that's taking away their attention. It's probably great for brands like Vita Coco and Zico that, can now focus on things like lemonade and real marketable flavors versus feeling like they have to, one-up the startup brands with some crazy new thing. Well, anyway, that's all the time we have for right now. Hope you've enjoyed watching our little roundup here. Definitely stay tuned for more coverage on these categories and more. So thanks for watching.